You're listening to the Reds Podcast.
This is episode number 97. We're talking about how to be a better speaker, how to give better presentations. We've got a 4-part process that's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
David, what time did you get up this morning to go to the after Christmas sales?
That hasn't happened yet.
Yes, indeedy. We did not get up at 4 a.m. or 6 a.m. or any ungodly hour to go fight traffic to buy stuff at the mall. That just didn't happen today.
I didn't even know that was a thing, but Macy's sent us this big flyer catalog kind of thing in the mail. And they are apparently having the lowest prices of the season, Laurel.
Especially on underwear. They had a big ad about lowest prices ever on underwear.
Yeah, but they had a sofa that I thought was cool.
Well, we didn't get up at 6 a.m. to get the sofa.
No, I don't even know how I'd get it back here.
No.
Have to hire that out.
You would. Yeah, we are not after the holiday shoppers. I don't think we're shoppers
there's anything
at all.
we need. Yeah, we had a hard time shopping before the holidays.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing we need.
Well, it's all online. We don't need to go out to the sales when it's all on Amazon and you have Prime. That's a Christmas present right there. It's like Amazon Prime.
It could be. Yeah, that's a good idea. Why didn't you tell me that before Christmas?
Because we already have it.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's how we do. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more product, and make more money. We're business optimizers. We'll show you how to be more efficient in your marketing and find the hidden money that's sitting right in front of you. It's right there right now. Money on the table. That's what we're going to help you with.
There's like a pile of money in this studio.
Pile of money.
It's just piled up, and we'll help you find your pile of money.
Absolutely. More importantly, we show you how you can live life on your terms. To do that, one of these days you're going to need to present something. We're always selling ourselves. I remember the first time, Laurel, I went to work with a new client. I was out in, I'm going to call it the flyover. I was in Kansas.
Or the drive over, if you've ever done that.
The boss man, the guy who had brought me in, wanted me to get up and give a presentation, which was actually quite hilarious because I hadn't planned on giving any presentations. I needed to go out there and do some work, and I was in the T-shirt. I think it was in like a PETA T-shirt, like a meat is murder kind of T-shirt. Yeah. They took me on site. He's like, well, hey, David, why don't you get up and tell them what you're working on? Uh-oh, scary thought, right? Mm-hmm. Especially when you're looking like, a hippie or something. And that's exactly what I looked like and what I was dressed as. But we were kind of going for the hippie thing. It's like, this guy's so far out there, maybe he knows what he's doing. That was the kind of vibe. Unfortunately, the presentation didn't really match that. It wasn't very polished. I didn't walk away feeling good about it. So we're going to talk about giving a great presentation, maybe not in that capacity. Maybe you want to speak at a conference. Maybe you just want to get in front of your workers and inspire them. This is how to do it.
I run into a lot of people that are terrified to speak in public. That is one of the top fears. Aren't more people afraid of that than afraid of dying?
Dancing in public is number 1. Speaking in public, number 2. Death, number 3.
There you have it. So I run into a lot of people that are scared to speak, but I also run into people that don't have a problem getting out in front of people and speaking, but they just really don't know how to do it. Whether they think they do or not, they're just not doing it right. So this episode is, if you're in either category, how to give a good speech and how to feel confident about it, how to be prepared, and then leave feeling like you've gotten something great across that's going to help you grow your business.
Got a 4-step process. You just mentioned number 1, be prepared.
Being prepared is the part that I spend most of my time on. I've never been great at memorizing anything, but I do like to practice things in advance. If I'm giving about a 45-minute speech or so, I will practice that speech. If it's a new speech, I'll practice it 3 times. I'll practice it usually 2 days before. I'll practice it twice. I'll practice it once the day before, and then I'll read over it the day of. And that helps me time it out, helps me know what I'm going to say, helps me not use my notes the whole time. I just kind of have a general outline, and I can go in feeling confident about the subject and about what I'm saying. So I think it really helps to outline what you're saying, to practice it a couple times, know your material, and time it out. Make sure that you're not going too long. The attention span of people these days is not very long. And if you're giving a presentation and somebody has a time limit on you, 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, you want to be sure to hit that time limit. Don't go over. So make sure you're practicing enough to keep in that time limit.
When you say preparation, it's not just going through the speech and rehearsing it. Although you do that, you always kick me out of the house or don't let me come downstairs.
Yep.
Or upstairs. Depending on where you are, I've got to be on the opposite floor. But it's so much more than just that. I'd love to know your outline process. Do you actually script out a speech? We've talked about this before. Laurel and I are members of a local Toastmasters club, and you see people that literally write out their speech word for word. And one person that I can think of, she would memorize it every time. We're talking 10, 12 minutes, word for word. She got lost, she would think about it and get right back on. But you don't do that.
Yeah, she was like a robot. It was impressive in a robot sort of way. I've done both things. I have written out speeches word for word, and I write them out not in paragraph form, but in outline form. So I have the topics, and then I write out how I want to say it. And when I do that, I'll outline the whole thing. It takes a long time to do it that way. And I'll practice it my 3 times, and then I'll cut down the outline just to like topics. So I've practiced what I want to say, how I want to word it and say it. And then the topics in the outline, in the shortened outline, just help me stay on track with what I want to say. So I've done it that way. I've also done it by just writing bullet points and stories. I like to integrate more stories into my speaking now. And so I'll just put a note, story about David or something like that, and that'll remind me to tell that story. And then I'll take that into the point that I have. So when you're telling stories about yourself or stories that you're familiar with, you really don't have to script it out like you would maybe more informational topic. I think either way, you need to get the audience from point A when they sit down to point B, what you want them to walk away with. And your outline is the journey that gets them there. So you wouldn't want to have 20 things along your journey. You want to make sure your outline is concise. You want to leave them maybe with 3 pieces of information. And you want to make sure that your point, maybe 1 to 3 points, keep it small, is coming across very clear by the time you walk out of the room.
I do a hybrid. If you've listened to some of the special editions that I do on my own here at Red Podcast. In fact, yesterday's episode, which is at redpodcast.com/SE09, if you want to listen to that, Marketing Lessons from Jesus Christ. When I'm broadcasting, I will script out a lot of things, but I'll also leave room for improv. Like you, though, Laurel, I'll have a beginning, a middle, and an end. I'll know what I'm trying to accomplish when I go onto a story I'm maybe more familiar with than the script itself. Now, when you're giving a live presentation, it's important to do more of that. Nobody wants to see you read a script.
No, even if it's a good script. We saw that the other day when we went to a conference here in Nashville. There was a really incredible entrepreneur that was so lively and fun, and she got up on stage to tell her story, and she literally read it from her binder. And it was very disappointing because it was a great story, and she had such colorful, amazing imagery and words in there, but she just looked at this binder and just read it. It was sad. It
would have been 10 times more powerful if she could have taken those words, even if it wasn't perfect, and done it without the script. Just some note cards.
Exactly. Her whole thing was a story. It was her story. And she could have told it without just reading it. And you don't know how terrible that effect is when you just stare at a binder and not at the audience, or at your notes and not at the audience. So you do need to be prepared. Even if you script it out, practice it until you know it so you can speak to the audience and not to your notes.
A good reason to practice, a good reason to use those bullet points. Things happen in the middle of a speech. Think about being at a comedy club. Those guys are giving a presentation. It's a scripted presentation. Maybe a bartender drops a glass, or maybe somebody heckles. You've got those kind of things going on in your speech. Things happen. A lot of times, I mentioned the Toastmasters club that we're in. Information will come across the PA system of the meeting room that we're in. And you've got to work through that. If you've got a script, if it's word for word, you can get thrown off a lot easier, in my opinion. So do prepare, like Laurel is saying, but allow for some flexibility. Number 2, as far as our elements of a great presentation, I call this presence. You need to look like you belong there. To give another story, you and I went to go see a very well-known author in the entrepreneurial space. He was brought in by an entrepreneur group here in town. I was really expecting a lot, and when it comes to presence, this guy had absolutely none. Sometimes people are so much better with a written word. This guy was an author, and I really expected that to come across live. He did not have it. Presence accounts for more than the message, even, in my opinion.
Well, let's talk about why he didn't have presence. First, he had 2 amazing people introduce him, and that was a great start, and we were all expecting something amazing. And then he comes up there, and he proceeds to thank like 10 people in the audience before he says anything. So he's just giving shout outs to people in the front and the back.
Kids. There was like a little kid there, 6 months old. He let everybody know about her.
Yeah, just all kinds of shout outs to people and people we didn't know, we didn't care about, and we're there to see his speech. And he lost us on minute 0. I felt like he could have come up there and just had a great presence. He already had a good book and just really own it. He started out really poorly.
You've got to start with a powerful statement. Never, ever, ever start your presentation. Hello, Nashville. How's everybody doing today? And even worse, I can't hear you. Hello, Nashville. How are you doing today? Looking for a response from the audience. Doesn't work.
Or mic check. Is this on? Is this on? I'm just checking. Is this on? It's like you're losing people before you've said anything.
Yeah, do a mic check, do your sound check before you get up there. Absolutely right. You also have to look like you belong there.
You have to own it.
You have to. Walk up on stage, look like you belong there. That's half the battle.
So what would you say looking like you belong there entails, David?
Well, I think it depends. If you're a doctor, you need to look like a doctor. I don't know, wear a suit and tie, some uniform of authority. If you're a rock star, come in there, tattoos blazing, that's your uniform. But you need to have the uniform that people expect from you, just like you want the name that people expect from you. If you're a teacher, you know those cool teachers. They're like, oh, just call me David, Mr. David. That's part of your uniform, the name. Like all these preachers we got, like Pastor Bob. That's not like a real authoritarian kind of name.
Yeah, it's more like a friendly,
it's a friendly thing.
Approachable thing. But you really, as I said, you want to own it. We went to a conference earlier this year where the MC came out, and he's wearing this weird bright color green T-shirt with some weird blazer over it. And he just walked out on that stage, and it didn't matter what he said. He looked ridiculous.
Yeah, and it was like one step above like taco juice, like dripping down his chin straight onto. He looked like a complete slob, and
he did.
It's hard to get the respect of people when you're talking to them when you're dressed like that.
The audience will judge you before you open your mouth, and you want to make sure you are wearing that uniform. You are looking like you're supposed to look, and then they'll just not even notice what you're wearing. They'll just listen to what you're saying.
With that said, presence also involves limited use of PowerPoint. See a lot of guys that really, really rely on that. We talked about preparation. I think a lot of people forego preparation, go straight to PowerPoint and just read the slides. Not a way to do it. Not a way. As a matter of fact, I have no text on any PowerPoint slides that I use. No text. It's there to accentuate what I'm talking about. But when I'm speaking, all eyes on me. I recommend the same for you.
I think PowerPoints can be very helpful depending on the topic. If you're trying to show something, demonstrate something, if you need a visual, that's the way to go, but just don't overwhelm people and do not fill it full of text. That is the worst. That is not commanding presence when you fill your PowerPoint full of bullet points and text and this and that, and then especially what you said, David, when you read it. Nothing is worse than that.
If I'm doing a full presentation, no more than 10 slides for me. I see a lot of guys get up 50, 60 slides. It's like one of those flip books that you do it and it's like an animation. You have those when you were a kid.
Sure.
It's like the equivalent of that.
I don't know how I feel about that. If you have a longer PowerPoint and just have a couple graphics on each slide, that doesn't really detract for me personally when I'm watching that. But if it's a long PowerPoint presentation with lots of text and it's really intricate, that's not as interesting for me. I think there's some give and take there.
We talked about starting with a powerful statement. Ending, just as important. I like to end with a very powerful statement. Walk off. If there's Q&A, I like there to be a segment in between my speech and Q&A. And that can be somebody introducing me again. David will now take questions from the audience. I come back on, and people know it's separate from the main presentation. But it always amazes me how much energy you can lose by saying, I'll now take questions. And then nobody wants to be the person to go first, and there's a mic problem, or somebody's not speaking into the mic, and there's that guy in the back of the room that just shouts it, and nobody can hear him. Kills the energy.
Yeah, David, you do like a mic drop. You just drop it and just walk out. It's like, bam, done.
Peace out, motherfuckers.
You can't say that.
My buddy John Acuff, New York Times best-selling author.
There's a little plug right there.
Incredible speaker. Yeah, he's got a new book coming out here in a few months. Acuff.me is his website. He told me this about speaking, and he said he got it from a book called Stand Like Lincoln, Speak Like Churchill. He talked about the power of a pause, about getting up before you start anything, standing there, just counting a few seconds, then beginning your speech. All eyes on you. They're waiting for what to do. Everybody gets quiet, and how powerful that can be.
That's the scariest thing to do, though, when you're a presenter.
Yeah. Yeah. And people don't know if you're doing that on purpose or you're just nervous a lot of times. Scary for everybody.
It is scary for everybody, so I think you have to do it in a way that makes you look more confident and not like you forgot what you were going to say.
But with that said, though, think about if you had forgotten all your lines, all eyes on you. Everybody's waiting to see what's going to happen. When you go into it with that kind of confidence, they can tell that you knew what you were doing, and then you've got them. Also, important to remember that a pause doesn't just work in the front. It can also work within the speech. I'll talk very, very fast, not only in conversation, but in broadcasting. I'm talking a lot slower now than I used to, and that is completely deliberate. We don't know how fast we're speaking. Timing should always be a lot slower than you think.
You're like the micro machine man, David. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, I knew him as the FedEx guy because that's what he did before he was plugging micro machines.
Ah.
It's like those guys at the end of a car ad. They finance this, finance blah, 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 blah.
You could do
APR.
that.
Well, a lot of times what they'll do is they will speed it up. And they can do that now because of technology. It doesn't change the pitch. It used to be, this is kind of a funny segue, and this is something we're going to talk about here on the next topic about staying on topic. But do you remember Alvin and the Chipmunks?
Mm-hmm.
They recorded that at half speed. And then when they would change the pitch, play the tape faster, that's how they would get the chipmunk sound.
Next episode, we'll try that.
Let's talk about the pulse. Keep things moving forward. That's something we try to do here on Red Podcast. Every episode, about 25 minutes. You've got to keep things moving forward. All stories must be relevant. How many times have you been listening to a podcast, Laurel? Somebody just goes off on a complete tangent.
Mm-hmm.
There are a lot of great stories. People want to hear stories. That's very, very important during a presentation.
You have to bring it back.
Got to bring it back.
Otherwise, you're just rambling. And you can ramble to your girlfriends or guy friends, but not when you're giving a presentation or speaking or podcasting.
Don't get caught up in emergencies or problems. I remember hearing a story about Zig Ziglar. And you know Zig Ziglar, famous motivational speaker.
Sure.
He's speaking to people maybe sometimes 8,000, 10,000 at a time. And when you've got a crowd that big, it's like having a big music event. There's always going to be somebody that dies eventually. And that's exactly what happened. Somebody had a heart attack.
Oh.
And he was just right on cue. Got the guy out of there. You can't do anything. Most people don't even know because it's a huge arena. They're looking at you to keep moving forward. Let the guy having the heart attack get out of there. Let him get the medical care that he needs. Don't stop and put all eyes on him. The best thing that you can do is keep on moving forward.
I kind of wish I had the power to give somebody a heart attack when I speak. I'm not there yet.
Ugh, awful. Laurel Staples is evil. Don't go down rabbit trails. We've talked about that. It's a major problem in podcasting. It's a major problem in meetings. That's why meetings take so long and you don't get anything done. You've got to have a point. You want to accomplish that point by the end of it. Don't go down rabbit trails. I like to say get in and get out. You want to be like a drive-by daddy. Get in, do your business, and leave, just like a deadbeat dad.
Well, remember that you're taking people along this path from A to B. Once you take them there, your job is done. It's a journey, and it's a finite journey, and then you're done unless they want to pay for your next service that you're upselling them to.
Keep dynamics as well as energy up and down. You've seen really great speakers before. Let's take a Tony Robbins, for example. He's really, really emotional and rah, rah type of guy. Get you to clap your hands. And one of those guys is like, all right, give a shoulder rub to everybody on your right side and turn around and give it to everybody on your left side. Really creep everybody out. It's that kind of energy.
I hate that.
But you can't do that for 8 hours a day. You've got to have those emotional moments. It's like having a fast music album. You're going to have a ballad on there. You can't just hammer at home. Now, you could be the best speaker in the world. You've still got to do this because even the best speaker in the world isn't going to work for an entire event from beginning to the end. And what somebody like Tony Robbins will do, what a guy like the guy we mentioned earlier, John Acuff, will do, just a phenomenal speaker. They'll bring in other speakers to change up the pace of things. They'll bring in women. They'll bring in people that aren't as polished, aren't as motivational, aren't as energetic.
I love how you said all that with women in the same statement.
Well, what I'm saying is just somebody different because you've got a man's voice. That's why we've got you on here.
That's really great.
Or that's why you've got me.
There we go.
Two different voices, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you've got two men, you don't know who's who. Two women, you don't know who's who. This is especially bad when you get three people in the room.
It is true. The pulse is kind of like those settings that you do on the elliptical or on the treadmill at the gym. There's not something that just goes like straight up and plateaus and keeps going. I mean, it goes up and down and you
Interval
climb the
training.
hills. It's the interval training and it keeps people engaged. Because if you're just on a plateau level, whether you're on a high energy level or a low energy level and you just stay there, you're going to lose people. So you have to go up and down to keep it dynamic, to keep people engaged with what you're saying.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's an overall better experience for everybody. They walk away remembering the highs and the lows. My sister lives in Phoenix, Arizona. Always sunny. Always sunny. She doesn't appreciate those sunny days nearly as much as we would here in Nashville, where it's currently raining.
Exactly.
You've got questions, you've got comments, feel free to reach out to us. Laurel and I are available at redpodcast.com. Happy to talk to you. Happy to take episode suggestions. So if you have those, send them on. If you're on iTunes, search for Real Entrepreneur Development. We'd appreciate if you would leave a rating, leave a review. That will help us to come up more frequently in the iTunes search engine. We'll be able to reach more entrepreneurs, build the Real Entrepreneur Development community. Then everybody wins. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.